All right, today we're tackling something really complex, something that's at the absolute core of officer-involved shootings. It's this clash, between what a person remembers and what the hard evidence actually says.
So, picture this. An officer, just seconds after a life-or-death situation, is asked what happened. Their adrenaline is pumping, and they're trying to piece together the most intense moment of their entire life. And what comes out is something like this.
And right there, that's where everything gets complicated. I mean, 3 rounds versus 11, that's a huge gap, right? And it's so easy for us to hear that and think, wait a minute, someone's not telling the truth. But the answer, well, it's way more complicated than just a simple yes or no. So to really understand what's going on here, we have to dig into this science. We've got to look at what happens to your brain, to any brain, when it's under that kind of life or death pressure. Okay, now check this out, because this is where it gets wild. Look at the sheer scale of this stuff. A major survey found that an overwhelming number of officers have their senses go haywire. We're talking 84% saying sounds just faded away. That's called auditory exclusion. Almost 80% get tunnel vision. Your brain isn't a video camera just recording everything. Nope, it's a survival machine, and it's frantically shutting things down to focus on one thing: staying alive. And of course, this has a massive impact on memory. Think about it. The same research shows that a full third, 1 out of every 3 officers in a shooting, couldn't accurately remember how many shots they fired. And that's the keyword, right? Couldn't. It's not about refusing to. It's about being physically unable to. This chart really spells it out for us. It shows you just how fragile memory becomes. So if an officer fires 5 shots or less, their memory is actually pretty decent, about 81% accurate. But watch what happens next. The second you get into the 6 to 9 round range, boom, accuracy just falls off a cliff, all the way down to 29%. And here is the absolute kicker. Get this. Once you hit 13 or more rounds fired, an officer's ability to count them correctly drops to 0. Not almost 0, 0. So let's be really clear. In the most intense, life-threatening situations, expecting someone to have a perfect memory of the round count isn't just unrealistic, it's literally a scientific impossibility. And believe it or not, it gets even more extreme. I'm talking about documented cases where officers have 0 memory of even pulling the trigger until someone shows them the empty shell casings. And this isn't some one-off thing that only happens in the real world. In super realistic training, the kind designed to mimic that stress, up to 90% of officers have memory gaps about firing their weapon. Okay, so it's not just about the brain's biology under stress. There's another huge piece to this puzzle, and it's all about how officers are trained, the muscle memory and the mental habits that get drilled into them. Think about police firearms training. For safety and just to be efficient, it's usually all about short, controlled drills. Fire 2 rounds, check your target. Fire 3 rounds, reholster. Now do that thousands and thousands of times. What you're doing is building this mental blueprint, or what scientists call a schema. The very idea of shooting your gun gets hardwired in your brain as a small 2 or 3 shot event. And this right here just lays out the massive disconnect, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the clean, predictable, controlled world of the firing range. And on the other, you have the absolute chaos and sensory overload of a real-world shooting. They're 2 completely different universes. So what happens when that officer is in a real shootout and their memory is all broken up because of stress? Well, the brain hates a vacuum. It tries to fill in the blanks to make sense of it all. And what does it use to patch those holes? It goes with what it knows, what feels right, that 2 or 3 shots pattern that's been burned in from all that training. And as you can probably guess, this huge gap between what the brain perceives and what actually happened, it all ends up in the courtroom. And that's where the stakes become incredibly, incredibly high for everyone. So how does the legal system even begin to deal with this? Well, the standard they use for use of force isn't, did the officer remember everything perfectly? That's not the test. The test is something called objective reasonableness. The question the court asks is, would another reasonable officer in that exact same situation with the same information have acted in the same way? It's about the moment, not about perfect recall later on. And this idea was at the heart of a really important Supreme Court case, Plumhoff v. Rickard. In that case, officers fired 15 shots to end a super dangerous car chase, and the court said that was reasonable. Why? Because they focused on the threat. The driver was still a deadly threat, not on counting the exact number of bullets it took to stop him.
But here's where it gets tricky. The legal standard is one thing, but what happens inside a courtroom, that's a whole different ballgame. Even if a court later decides the shooting was justified, that first statement, "I think I fired 3," when the evidence shows 11, that becomes a weapon. It's used to hammer the officer's credibility and paint them as a liar. And this is what it all comes down to, a clash of two totally different stories in the courtroom, both built around the exact same fact, that misremembered number of shots.
From the prosecution's point of view, it's a simple story of deception. They'll argue the officer knew exactly what they were doing. They intentionally lowballed the number to make the shooting sound less extreme. To them, it's not a mistake, it's a lie. And if they lied about that, what else are they lying about? It's meant to torpedo their entire testimony.
Then you have the defense, and they come in armed with all the science we just talked about. Their story is one of trauma. They'll say, look, this isn't a lie, it's a symptom. It's a predictable, documented result of a brain under extreme duress. The officer wasn't trying to deceive anyone. They gave an honest but flawed guess. That's why they say things like, "I think." It's not about a character flaw. It's about human biology.
So that's where we're left, with this head-on collision between the messy reality of the human brain under pressure and a legal system that's built on finding certainty. This whole 3-round problem isn't just about police work. It forces us all to ask a much bigger question. If we know for a fact that our brains don't work like video cameras, how can we expect our justice system to treat our memories like perfect recordings?